We have an unidentified flying object.
I'm Jack Oswald, and you're listening.
This is Mr. Hammer, and you're listening to...
I'm Richard C. Hoagland, and you're listening to...
I'm Art Bell, and you're listening to Dr. J Radio Live.
We have an unidentified flying object.
Welcome back to another great episode of Dr. J Radio Live. Of course, I'm your host, Dr. J, broadcasting from the City of Demons. That's right, you heard me correctly. Los Angeles is no longer the City of Angels. At least that's not what I see anymore. Now, as you've already heard me promoting the show for today, we are going to hear from the other side, which, let me tell you something, folks. Skepticism, healthy skepticism, you should always carry some of it. You know, every great scientist on this planet and in history, whatever theory they ended up discovering and then which ultimately became fact, it all started with skepticism and ultimately led through a series of experiments and enough data to make that conclusion. And so even though for this last year, I call it, it's crazy because I hate to use the word stint, but that sounds like a prison sentence. But in fact, I have been on for a year straight. And before that, there was about 2 years off, but 5 years before that. This guest is not only someone that I've known and consider a very good friend, going back literally about 7 years. It'll be 7 years this coming February. He's been on the show a multitude of times, not this past year until today. Let me give you some background shows that he appeared on. I was able to hold a fantastic debate between him and Stanton Friedman. That went great. Professional, they weren't talking over each other, they waited for each turn to speak, etc. I did another one, Bill Burns. That blew up. When you have to resort to physically attacking a person instead of, you know, the argument at hand, then you know something's not right. The third person who said yes about 5 years ago, but we have not had him on yet to do this debate, is the one and only Richard Dolan. He said so. He said, I'm willing to debate him. Now it's just a matter of time because I know he wants to come on alone. And if you guys want to see him follow through with what he said on air, then I need you guys and gals to reach out to Richard and say, hey, when are you going to debate the skeptic? Now, I keep saying the skeptic, the skeptic, the skeptic. I know some of you are going to use the word debunker. Whichever you want to use, it's still a human. He runs a UFO site, a blog, basically called Bad UFOs. He's also a writer for the Skeptical Inquirer. He is a member of Mensa. If you don't know what Mensa is, it's literally basically like the high IQ society, only better, because it takes only people in the top 5% of intelligences around this planet. It's a very amazing group, and that's why it's always interesting to hear from this guest, because it's just so much knowledge, and you can't deny that. With that being said, I think I've thrown enough of hints around who happens to be on today, and let me introduce back my good friend, the one and only Robert Sheaffer. Robert, welcome back.
Hey, thank you, Dr. J. It's a pleasure to be here. Actually, Mensa cuts off at 2%, the top 2% of the IQ. So, yeah.
You know what? That's even You know what? Yeah. The 5% is the International High IQ Society. That's the thing lower than that.
Yeah,
that's what it is.
Couple of different ones, but actually it's a little easier than it sounds, because you could sort of go test shopping. There's 5 or 6 different tests that, any one of them at the 2% level, and if you're not so good at this test with its what it's measuring, then try a different test.
You're absolutely right about the 2%, and I'll tell you why. Because if I got a 90th percentile on my LSAT, then the LSAT is not based on general people. It's not based on every human on this planet. It's based on specifically people who have at least a bachelor's and are planning to attend law school. So they generally tend to have a higher IQ. So if it's 90 percentile versus every applicant to an American Bar Associated law school, then that makes perfect sense, being 98%. Because if it was just 95, I think the LSAT percentile would be something about maybe 80%, 75, or something like that. Real quick, have you ever heard of the 999 Society?
Yes, this is, they advertise in the Mensa publications at 99.9%.
Yeah, 0.1%.
In other words, the 0.1%, less than, 1/100, 1/10 or 1 person in 1,000, which is, I don't know, 3 standard deviations or something like that, for those who like statistics. But, well, I'm quite sure I wouldn't make it into that one.
Well, I do know, and when people say, oh, it's only this number, oh, that's a big number. Well, you forget people to realize that it's not just from the people who took the test recently. This has everything from, Mensa has 2-year-olds, and yeah, you're going to wonder, how can a 2-year-old take an IQ test? They have them catered to that age. There is a 2-year-old test, IQ test for Mensa. But there's generations. You can go to a 999 meeting as a teen or in your 20s or 30s, and you may very well have someone in their 80s at your table. The point is, there are 200 people, less than 200 in the entire society. Pretty phenomenal. Yeah. Very exclusive club. Now, I figured we could start on a very important topic because I'm just blown away how this shit is able to be brought around to everybody, and I know there's nothing about this me and you are going to disagree on any level. And this is one of the few things, folks, that instead of being an interviewer and trying to be neutral between both of you, me and Robert are siding on the same thing against flat Earth. God damn it! What is wrong with people, Robert? Tell me. I've read, somebody sent me a book and paid me to read it, say, you're going to be convinced when it's done. Sorry, I'm not. I've seen hundreds of videos. I saw, we talked about last night or evening, the Beyond the Curve documentary, which, by the way, in that damn documentary, they are debunked by their very own people that they turn to, JPL. And the other thing, as we also talked about yesterday in that documentary, which everyone, if you're interested in seeing it, and I'm not trying to promote a flat Earth documentary, it's called Beyond the Curve, and it's on Netflix. If you recall, Robert, we were saying this yesterday, when Mark Sargent, the star, if you want to call him that, of this show, the main promoter, of this, and he was with his mother, and they were, I assume, in their backyard, and the cameraman asked him if there are any educators in there, and he goes, no, if you think about it, there can't be, because if they're educators, they're part of the propaganda. And then she goes, well, how about anybody with any college degree, anything beyond high school? He says, there can't be. They're all part of it. And I'm like, oh my God, that is like beyond delusional. So I've asked friends, I only know one acquaintance who actually believes it. And I said, all right, I'll give you 20 minutes. I won't say a word. Sell me. Just sell me. Everything you say, I'm going to assume to be correct for sake of argument, but sell me. Nobody can do it, Robert. Can you sell me? I mean, I know it's going to be really hard to step into that role, but do you think it's possible you could give me some idea of how people will latch on to flat Earth? Right? Yeah, or more exclusive for them. right? And you said this to me yesterday about their argument about gravity. You mentioned the fact that people absolutely want to, be either correct and all this other stuff. I kept wondering, okay, the biggest things for me, Robert, are this. One, I know none of them can ever give you a good argument. None of them can really say anything out of their ass at all. I mean, it's just they're literally speaking in a different language. You know that old saying, I hear you talking, but you're not saying anything? That's what sums up flat earthers. They're talking, but they're not saying anything of substance. None. But let's take this for example. So they don't believe anything in NASA. They don't believe that we went to the moon. They believe that the so-called pictures of the Earth are all fake. Okay, so for the sake of argument, NASA's fake. Well, what about SpaceX and Boeing and everybody else, Bigelow, who makes stuff for the skies, for the moon, for the space? Okay, well, for the sake of argument, they too have to be in on this conspiracy, right, Robert? Okay, let's take it one step. Thank you. You just made my next argument. I was like, okay, so now we have the space. The next people that all have to be a part of it are not just the airlines, not just the airline pilots, not just the military pilots, but every pilot. Skydivers like me, who's, the FAA issued me a canopy license. Am I part of the conspiracy now too? Or, someone who's flying a little Cessna 182, that is their hobby plane. They have to be part of it too. Where does it end?
Why don't we have any? I mean, it's pretty easy to get more or less anywhere with an airplane if you got a big enough airplane. Why don't we have pictures of the edge of the world? I would like to see a nice jet fly along the edge of the world and get pictures kind of over the side.
I'll tell you, Robert, why you can't. You're going to crash into the dome.
Oh, that's right. There's actually a dome. It's a solid thing.
It's called the firmament. They got it out of the first book of the Bible called Genesis. They believe the sun is only a light on the dome, so-called dome, that is only 3,000 miles away instead of 95 million miles or whatever it is. And also all the stars and everything we see is just lights on this so-called canopy that protects us and also prevents us from going beyond the ice. But you're absolutely right. Show me the ice at the end of the world.
Yes. Shouldn't be that hard to see it. And I guess if you're careful, you could avoid flying into the dome.
Right. Now, okay. Now, what about every rocket that took off? Okay, for their argument, let's assume it never went to space, but it went high enough to where we couldn't see it anymore. Why didn't it crash into the dome?
Yeah, the ones that they launched to try to go to the moon or try to go to Mars, they should go.
Or even SpaceX's, Falcon Heavy 9 rocket this past year, which has been phenomenal. I mean, they got excellent cameras mounted on the boosters and the actual main rocket, and you're seeing amazing images. But either way, if you were a flat earther off Cape Canaveral or there the day of, you will see that giant behemoth of a rocket launch up, and when it gets to a point, it's going to shrink in size, clearly because it's going further away from you. Well, none of them have addressed why doesn't it crash into the dome and just come down as a flattened rocket and whatever else. debris.
Well, probably the whole thing is part of theatrics, and the reason it's going up there out of sight, and then when we're not watching, they just crash it into the ocean to make us think that it went into outer space.
Exactly. You just said one of the key phrases, to make us think. To make us think.
Yeah.
It's crazy. We'll have people on here that are talking about UFOs or whatever it be. And for people who are listening, no, I do everything. If it's not a UFO researcher, if it's not the other side like Robert, we'll talk about ghosts if that you wanted to talk about, or politics, or whatever is in the world news that seems to interest me. I always love speaking to intelligence agents. And so when I say that, that's always an open invitation for you all to send requests. But I just still am beyond blown away that this idea of flat Earth, which we put to rest 2,000 years ago, again 500 years ago, and yet there's a society. I sent out a tweet the other day. It was more of a mockery, and I never mean to put people down, but I wanted to get somebody from the Flat Earth's attention to say, come forward, convince me. And what I looked at, and this is what I found, and it's not surprising either, that there's only 500 members in the Flat Earth Society. So,
you mean in the United States or in the whole world?
The International Flat Earth Society. Now,
oh wow!
Others,
so all across the globe.
Yeah, all across, and others who are in, Flat Earth believers say, "Oh, well, the real Flat Earthers are not part of that society." I didn't even know they discriminate within Flat Earth, but apparently they do. And so the tweet went something along the lines of, "I just found out there are 500 members in the International Flat Earth Society," and I said, "Wow! Cancel Christmas." What do these 500 people know that 7 billion plus don't know?
Yeah. And what I keep asking myself is, even if this were true, why would it be done? What possible reason would there be to want to trick everybody to think that we got this round Earth out in space, when in fact we got essentially a cosmic theater, a flat Earth, and a screen and stuff gets projected on it or whatever? It's why?
That's one of two biggest questions I have. If there is this vast conspiracy, who's benefiting from it? If they are doing it and they are all engaged in lying to us and sending up fake satellites and having weird windows on all airplanes, so when we see out them they're supposedly fish lens, and supposedly they make everything curved, so what you may perceive as a curved Earth, if you were flying in the Concorde 30 years ago, you were actually fooled by fish lens of windows. But that's
that's how it was.
Yeah, that's what their arguments are. It's just so bizarre. But again, who would benefit from literally this? Okay, for your sake of argument, assume that you believed and followed every UFO story, which I know you followed, but assume that you believe them all to be true. The true proponents of that conspiracy, again, this is for your sake, right, of argument, if that is a small population, right, very small population of people that would be engaged in the cover-up. But Flat Earth, you're talking like a billion plus people would have to be engaged in this massive cover-up.
Yeah, entire industries, entire job descriptions, yes, and much of the educational world as well, because there would have to be a serious study of the reality that is of flatness and of the dome and what's the dome made of and so on. There would have to be people studying that, don't you think?
Oh, absolutely, and that.
And so you'd have two levels of reality. You'd have the people who were studying the dome and so on as it actually was, and then you'd have the people who were maintaining the fiction that the Earth is round and there is no dome. So it sooner or later would leak out no matter what. But
now, here's the other thing that I kept wondering, why would they believe in something so bizarre, that we live on this flat plane that is not spinning, that is not traveling through space with our solar system, that is not traveling with our galaxy, all that. And I was just wondering why, and finally something shed a little bit of light on me. Apparently it was basically some flat earthers who clearly have extra money to pay for billboards to try to convince other people that there's a flat earth. And one of them said, stop hiding the flat earth. You know, and then on the bottom it said something, you are hiding God. And I'm like, oh, I see. Is it because these people, it's based on dogma? These people, you know, aside from what you also said and what we've also said, that they want to be part of something, they want to know a secret that we don't know and all that. The book that I was paid to read, essentially, by the author, and I don't want to say the name of the book, but yeah, it was a very tough read.
Make him pay for that.
I know, right?
Give him another. If he gives you another $50, you can mention the book's name.
I know. I'll say a little bit more because I don't want to get people on. But I found in the very early on of the book, and even through some of these videos on YouTube, that they all quote Genesis. Apparently, in the First Testament of the Bible, the Old Testament, they make a hint at after God created all of us, and created the heaven and the waters, etc., he created a dome. Now, I wish I had someone to pose this next question to. I was like, don't you think the people who wrote the Old Testament didn't quite know exactly what we know today as far as science, or even the Greeks 2,000 years ago?
Yeah. Well, the Greeks are doing pretty well compared to how it originally from Genesis, where they thought, you know, actually there are several references to that are clearly geocentric, not necessarily flat Earth, but clearly geocentric in the Old Testament, and you know, something about thou hast fixed the firmaments of the heavens so that it cannot
there you
move.
go. There you go.
And,
that's where it came from.
Now, actually, there is part of creationism is geocentric nowadays. It's not a very big group, but whatever percentage of people believe, you know, in more or less in biblical creation, there's a subset of them also go as far as to believe in geocentricity, which does not necessarily involve a flat Earth, although it could have a flat Earth.
You know, okay, you're right, and you know, obviously, if you had never been in anything that would take you for a flight, right? And we know that balloons didn't start being used for stunts, etc., for at least a couple hundred years ago. Nothing a few thousand years ago, except from birds, etc., was going above them. And so for them, I could see how they all perceived it was flat. I mean, sure, you're gonna keep walking, and you never, aside from coming across valleys and hills and mountains, you're going to perceive it as flat. You're going to look at the end of the horizon. You're going to look at the other side, north, south, east, west, all the sides, especially if you're in open water. You know, if you're really distant enough from wherever you left and you're not close to any mainland or island or any body of land, you're going to look in every direction, and for you, it will seem like it's flat.
Yeah.
But that was them. There is no excuse
even
today.
The Greeks realized that wasn't correct, because remember Aristotle said that, pointed out that when we see a lunar eclipse, we're seeing the shadow of the Earth on the moon, which is obvious in the way it's lined up, that the moon, when it goes into eclipse, is precisely opposite the sun in the sky. And when that happens, the shadow, we can see very clearly the shadow of the Earth falling on the moon, and it's round. It's pretty hard to argue that that's not the shadow of the Earth. So.
There's a comment in the chat. I'm going to read it for you. And by the way, anybody, if you want me to read anything on there, do what it's Lasha Senyuk, but she's using Carol White's account. Write in caps. Yes, I do read all your comments. If I miss anything during the show, I always check them out after. But if they're in caps, I promise you I get them. This is what she says. Pointing out an irony about perspective versus knowledge. We need to learn. We need both to learn. And that's a fantastic argument. That's a great statement. But try selling that to the flat Earth.
Yeah.
Okay, now, so assume that their biggest reason is because science destroyed God and religion and promoted atheism. and they're, I don't know. There's no evidence that there's yet another conspiracy, meaning the churches of the world and religions of this world started funneling money to some people to create this flat earth society to bring people back to God. That I highly doubt that's the reason. But clearly for the flat earthers, justification is to come back to the, to religions. And above this so-called dome is supposed to be either like a 12,000 mile tall throne where God with a long white beard that apparently he used that robe that he wore or the beard that he had to create the heavens, create clouds, and the dome.
Well, that's a pretty good image. I'm thinking of there, but how big is God if his throne is 12,000 miles high? Is he 10,000 miles or something like that? Well,
or maybe 15, because if he's sitting, right?
Yeah, well, maybe can his feet reach the floor when he's sitting on it? Or is he like a little kid kicking his feet?
And remember,
on the chair.
Underneath this flat disc of ours is supposed to be the hell of this existence. So they are able to, to say they got, the front end, the above us and the below us, all figured out. So no more school. It's all figured out.
Yeah.
Now I'm sure you heard this as well. Is one of the biggest arguments, and if you ever watch anybody out there pay attention to any flat earth debate, it always starts with this following sentence. When you were in kindergarten or first grade, the first thing you were taught was the globe model. And I'm like, well,
it must be false, right?
If you were taught the globe model, but didn't you also learn that 1 + 1 is 2, and your alphabets?
Exactly. Yeah, I was taught arithmetic, and that doesn't make it fake either.
So, that's cherry picking right there. Well, the globe is false, but 1 + 1 is 2 is real, is true, and apparently
I learned my ABCs also.
Yeah,
and
the ABCs sound like them too, right? So, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I know we've had a blast on this part, beating that dead horse. Okay, so let's go to the next one. Well, here, okay, well, Carol White, again, this is Lasha Senyak. If you want to go down this path, Lasha, you open the door, I'll read it. She says, so prove to me God doesn't exist.
Did we say that God doesn't exist?
No. We just said that there's not a 15,000. We were talking about a 15,000 foot tall God sitting on a throne above the dome. Yeah, that's what we mentioned.
Yeah.
Let's see if she writes anything else. But for that sake of the argument, do you want to tackle that on at all? But you made a very good point.
Well, yeah, I can't imagine why anybody would say that, if you deny the flat earth or if you deny literalism of Genesis, that you're denying all religion. I should point out, in interest of full disclosure, that I'm not religious, and so I personally don't believe in God. However, if we're looking at this as a philosophical question, certainly the great majority of Christians of all denominations would agree that, and Jews, I'm sure, would mostly all agree too, that just, if you view the Bible not as literally a science text or something like that, you're not throwing out religion, you're just kind of modernizing how to interpret it. Or a reformation, I guess, as you could say, because many religions have had reformations, and but that's a long ways from abolishing religion.
True. There's a statement that you made right there. Let's see if there's anything. Oh, okay. I just saw that. We fixed something. There is somebody who I might as well start the calls this way, is by bringing him on, and then anybody else from there, if you want to write something in the chat or you want to call, just please pay attention to the rules that I wrote in the beginning, that wait for your turn to be called. I'll call either by your area code, or if I recognize who it is, I'll call you by name, and just be respectful. And don't ask something you're afraid to go into, but Robert's been through it all. I mean, me and him have been to events together, and, at the UFO Congress, there's thousands, not thousands, but however many, 1,000 plus people
probably about 1,000.
Yeah, and he comes alone, and they're looking at him like, okay, the enemy's here, and so the point is he's ready for whoever wants to debate him. So, okay, the first one that I'm going to start with, and this might last longer than a few minutes just to sort of set the stage and until other people call. And for those of you who are looking for the phone number, it's 818-221-1902. Again, 818-221-1902. And I will type that into the chat. Let me just grab Tom Sheaffer. It's ironic, you both share a similar last name, differently spelled though. That's why I said similar.
Maybe his name is spelled correctly from the original German.
C-S-C-H-A-E-F-E-R. One F.
Right. Or the A-E normally in German would be an umlaut. There would be a S-C-H-A umlaut F-E-R. That means shepherd. That's a German word for shepherd. My spelling of the word is some sort of an American bungling of it or something, when people probably didn't know how to write their name and came over here, and so somebody wrote it down for them like that. And that's how it was.
Well, it's unique.
Probably.
That's unique, and I know this because in the early days, because there's a lot of Roberts, etc. in my phone, I have to search through your last name to find and I would start by typing it closer to his way. I'm like, oh no, hold on a second. I know Robert Sheaffer's last name and how it spells, so let me just do it. Let's just do it the way I know it instead of just fumbling this every time. All right, let me bring on Tom. Let's see if he's ready to go. And I'll wait till he actually answers so I can tell you who he is. Most of you will probably know who he is. Tom! Tom, you there? I can feel some fumbling. Okay, now I hear you. All right, for those of you out there listening, Tom is a webmaster. He designed the original website of mine, and he's also done the facelift. He is a fantastic webmaster, the best, hands down the best, and also hosts a show and a whole lot of stuff, which I'll let Tom say for that matter. So Tom, welcome to the show. Welcome back.
Hey, Dr. J, and hey, Robert. Good to hear you again.
Hi, Tom. Good to meet you.
Good. Well, yeah, we talked. I think last time you were on. It's been a couple of years, I think. But
the last time he was on was before I got sick, so it would have had to have been the end of 2016.
Yeah, that's great. No, I've been enjoying the conversation. The one thing I think that a lot of people forget about is Eratosthenes solved this whole problem, several hundred years BC, with measuring the Earth with a stick and with sunlight.
Right. In fact, I was even older than that, more like 300 or 400 BC. We're way back there.
There's an awesome video out that if you do a search for it, Eratosthenes, Carl Sagan does an awesome 10-minute video out on YouTube. If you ever want to show this to people, it's a great video, and he goes through the whole story of how Eratosthenes solved this whole curvature of the Earth thing. And the other thing I want to tell people is you can prove flat Earth wrong just by going to, there's a website called GC Map. I think it's GC Mapper or GCMap.com, and it's what pilots use to use what's called the Great Circle navigation, where they can shave flight time and distance off of their flight based on these mathematical formulas that actually work with the curvature of the Earth. So
exactly,
again,
spherical trigonometry. They use spherical trigonometry to compute the path that will give them the shortest distance and the least fuel. If the Earth were flat, you would use plane trigonometry, which would, of course, give you a whole different answer.
There's some stuff on Wikipedia that shows those formulas. They literally are rocket science, but if you look up Great Circle Navigation on Wikipedia, and there's a couple other sites out there, but GC Map is a great one. They show actual routes that planes take. and the plots and everything. It's pretty cool, and it's something that a guy that's running a 747 would probably want to check before he takes off. It's a really it's a great accurate site that pilots are using to do some of these calculations. So I mean, when people start talking about flat Earth from a lot of these biblical perspectives that are based on it seems like the more educated we get, the less these ancient texts seem to make sense. Maybe they have more of an allegorical flavor to them, but they just don't jive scientifically most of the time. And so
right, they're cultural documents and philosophical documents, but not scientific ones.
Right. So this whole thing about firmament and the four pillars, and then it's all I have in my head now is these memes I've seen of giant turtles with the world on their back. It's just
yes. Yes, indeed, lots of turtles. Yeah, and also even when you travel, if you know a little bit about astronomy, you don't have to be, highly knowledgeable. As long as you can find the Big Dipper and the North Star, and say where I live here, I'm near San Diego, and I'm used to seeing, the North Star at a certain position, a certain elevation. Then if I go up to Northern California, or I go up and I visit Oregon or someplace, and I look at it there, everything looks the same, but it's higher in the sky. And the reason it's higher in the sky is because the Earth is round, and that's exactly the same thing with Eratosthenes. If you measure how much higher the North Star is, say, between Oregon and here, and then if you know the distance in miles or kilometers, then you just multiply that by the fraction of the circle, and you have the circumference of the Earth right there. So it's really a very obvious and easy thing to do.
Now, you're pretty much a professional skeptic, if I understand you correctly. Okay.
Well, in that sense, yeah, but there's no money in it. I wish there were, but there's so it's more of a hobby.
Well, let me ask you this. Doesn't there seem to be a giant disconnect now between what people might call their own personal truth and what's objective truth? Like, objective truth is like, you jump off of a 20-story building, you're going to hit the ground and go splat. That's like an nobody's going to argue that. But it seems like people have all come up with their own personal truth now. What do you think about that?
Well, not all people, of course, but some people have, and I think that's true. As I was explaining with Dr. J earlier, I think the reason that a lot of these people are into this flat Earth thing is that it creates like a brotherhood and sisterhood.
Fraternity.
It's a social thing,
Yeah.
Yeah, it gives you belonging and a support group and all these things. I mean, we know that people who believe they've been abducted by aliens like to have these support groups where they meet together and they each tell their tales. And I think, from their standpoint, they're telling the truth. I think very few of them are making it up. I think, most of them are, they're probably, experiencing dreams or sometimes,
Have you seen, there was a television show that came out a couple of years, I think it was 2016, I could be wrong. It was called People of Earth. And it was a bit of what I would call soft-disclosure, where the premise of the show was that there was this ET abductee support group that gets infiltrated by a supposed journalist. Well, the journalist turns out himself finding out that he was abducted, but it's very based on a lot of this lore and about a lot of the common experiences people have had, and it's funny because it's taking a comedic look at the whole subject, yet at the same time the level of detail within the storyline is amazing.
Yeah, I didn't see that particular show, but I mean, I'm familiar with the whole idea. In fact, many UFO conferences these days, they will start each day with an experiencers forum. It's supposed to be primarily for the people, who consider themselves to be experiencers or abductees or whatever you want to call it. And they say no press, no journalism, no photographs, and so on. And I guess it's the idea that people, will feel more free to share their stories if they feel that, nobody's going to be reporting it, nobody's going to be judging them on it. But that is a realistic description, I think, of what's happening. And as we said about these people, many people think they have their own truth. They're many of them, they don't even really want to try to bring it in. You know, like say, well, maybe we could set up cameras and see if that's true, or maybe, you know, and I could have, you know, maybe say, well, I'll have my son come and check on me at night and see if, you know, if I'm there, or if they end up thinking they, you know, something like that. But they don't even want to set up that kind of verification protocol, however simple it might be, because it just kind of ruins things. You know, it's a nice picture.
It seems like people are getting embedded to their own point of view, to the point where rational discussion and a tit for tat in a level, logical kind of tone of voice. I believe that red is the ultimate color. Well, I believe that blue is the ultimate color. If we can talk about it in a more rational sense, then the so-and-sos are demons, and they should all burn in hell. And the so-and-sos are also demons, and you know, it's this back and forth demonization of tribes that is stifling good rational debate.
Yeah, it's sad, but yeah, people are getting too wound up in their own little identities, whether it's you know, based on beliefs in something, in religion, or in paranormal stuff, or in politics, or whatever, and they're just getting too wrapped up in it and thinking these other people are bad, and you know, it's sad that that's happening.
Do you think people are substituting these things, like we talked about earlier, the flat earth stuff? Do you think they're substituting those things because maybe the mainstream religions have fallen as far as their impact on people? They don't find any, they're seeing a lot of this.
Oh, yeah.
The Catholic Church got rocked by all the pedophilia and all that kind of stuff. So now they don't want to believe in that. But so these other things, maybe they're replacing religious fervor?
Absolutely, there's truth to that. I think that it's been shown a number of times that the belief in like these strange paranormal things, Fortean things, strong belief in that correlates negatively with religion. In other words, a person who is traditionally religious, from a traditional religion like a Lutheran or something like that, and somebody who, you know, participates in the religion on a regular basis, is less likely to become a UFO abductee, or a believer in the flat earth, or a believer in, you know, ancient astronauts or something like that. So yes, it really, it's almost like, you know, a lot of people have this sort of this void that you know, whether it's a God-shaped void or something.
They need a cause of some kind, or they need a purpose that is greater than themselves, so they kind of latch on to these different things. And you know, like you said earlier, the camaraderie and the brotherhood and the sisterhood, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
I was going to say, Tom, I wanted to hold you over after break so I could keep you on, and that way if anyone calls, they could go straight to them. But I do know that Robert needs a break. Is it okay if we take that real quick? And Tom, will you please hold over for after the break?
Absolutely.
Okay, let me gear this. Go ahead and take your break, Robert, and I am going to grab some break music for you to hear, and we'll be right back very soon.
Okay, hopefully we don't have a hot mic.
come back if you're still playing the break music.
Yeah. Okay, well, we just ended the break music so we can come back. That was actually quicker and even better. So, with that being said, everybody, welcome back to the second half of Dr. J Radio Live. I am, well, you clearly know who the hell I am at this point, especially this far into the show. We've been speaking to Skeptic Robert Sheaffer, and Tommy Shutter, also known as the real name Tom Sheaffer, is also on the line. And until someone else calls in, I'm going to keep him on. Let me also say this real quick, too, before we resume. Robert, while he's on, if there's a topic that you want to discuss, by all means, you're the guest of honor, bring it up, as opposed to waiting for one of us to bring it up. And if we're talking about something that you'd rather talk about something else, just take the conversation that direction, and that'll signal to me. Let me just remind everybody out there, remember, your support is definitely needed to keep this show going. Like this show, like all the shows, go back and write comments in all of them to help the analytics get better. Super chat it up. Who will break the $99.99 super chat? If no one has $100 to drop in a super chat, whatever you can spare helps. Whether it be $1, $5, $10, whatever. Or, unfortunately, at some point, this will have to end. And I'm talking about sooner than later. So, this is all on you. I get from your comments, definitely there's at least a proportional amount of people, the listeners, that do enjoy these conversations and topics and interviews. So essentially, I'm telling you all, my fate is literally in your hands. It's not going to take much for me to go into whatever other field, like I mentioned, law, because everything is already in place. The degrees are in place. The moral characters, renewed. There's only very little left. So, yeah.
Excuse me for laughing.
No, because you, and I know you're laughing because you've already heard us on the other side. So, anyhow, remember, friends, bring the support and super chat it up. And thank you, Justin T, for today's super chat so far. Okay, as you know, Robert Sheaffer is my guest today, and we have Tom Sheaffer on the call. Tom, you still there, right?
I'm still here hanging out.
All right. Now, do you want to ask Robert a question, or do you prefer to mention a topic and see what Tom has to say?
Well, I thought it might be interesting to talk about Tom DeLonge and about To the Stars.
Ooh, good idea.
It's been like the main news story in all of ufology for like the last 2 years.
And you were probably there when...
it reasonably closely. I've written about it quite a number of times on my blog being badufos.com. And so there's quite a bit of information about them there.
Well, how do you feel?
Well, real quick, hold on. Before you go, and Robert definitely wants you to say, you probably were there at the UFO Congress where Tom did get the Researcher of the Year award, right?
Yes. Well, he wasn't there in person, but he was. Yes, he did. He gave them a video, and they played the video.
Okay. Got it. Well, how shameful is that? Yeah. If I'm going to be presented an award, you bet your ass I'm going to be there, not send a video.
Yeah, I would. Frankly, I thought that was kind of disappointing.
That's kind of a little bit of, I don't know. I mean, I really hope he was just busy as opposed to it being a little part of ego, but... Anyhow, I didn't know. I wasn't there. This was when I was sick. I just found out that he had won. I was like, oh, wow. What happened when I was gone? So, yeah, please, Robert, bring it up. And then as Tom asked, how do you feel?
Well, yeah, just to summarize this for some people maybe who aren't too familiar with it, I would think that most of your listeners would have at least heard about this to some extent. So Tom DeLonge and a number of his friends and colleagues have put together a group or an organization called To the Stars Academy of Arts and Sciences. And they claim to do UFO research. They've been getting tremendous publicity, and they've been on all the major news, the CNN, Fox News, NBC. They're on all of them, or they have been on all of them. And in fact, there were these stories in the New York Times that were written by Leslie Kane and by what's his name, the guy who's the Blumenthal, Ralph Blumenthal. both of whom, of course, have been longtime UFO writers and proponents. But now with the New York Times publishing their story about To the Stars, and they talk about these, videos that supposedly were released by the government, and how this guy Luis Elizondo, supposedly ran this program that was AATIP, Advanced
Aerospace Threat Identification Program.
Yeah, something like that. Turns out he didn't run it. In fact, he didn't even really have any official responsibility with it. So they've been telling us a lot of stuff, unfortunately, that doesn't check out, and this is now being noted. And it's not just me. I mean, if you go, like, for example, you're familiar with the Black Vault and John Greenewald, he has been on this very aggressively, and he's pointed out any number of false statements that have been made by the people.
John Griswold has actually stepped up to Lou Elizondo and Tom DeLonge?
Yeah, absolutely.
Wow.
Oh, he's got. I've got the links on my blog. Just look on there. Well, I got so many listings about To the Stars. You can just look up, Greenewald on my blog, and that'll give you the links to what he wrote on the subject and on Tom DeLonge. So, I mean, some people are saying, well, this is a disinfo organization, that they're just giving us Pentagon disinformation. I know they're saying things that are not true, but I don't think it's because of that. I think it's just because they're trying to toot their own horn, and if they don't have a horn, they're going to make it look like they do, and exaggerate their own importance. But they've been enormously successful in getting publicity. And of course, now on the History Channel, the so-called History Channel, they just finished a 6-part series called Unidentified, and
Unidentified, right?
Produced by Tom DeLonge and his buddies, and featuring he and mostly Elizondo. I think you're trying to use Elizondo more as a spokesman now than in the past, because I think he's a better spokesman. That he seems more credible than Tom DeLonge, who frankly seems kind of scatterbrained much of the time. But anyway, so having said that,
Robert, I watched the entire series, and the one thing I did notice about Tom DeLonge is that he is put into kind of a back corner as far as his role in that first season.
Yeah.
You don't really see him much, or if there's a scatter shot, but it is focused mainly on Luis Elizondo.
Yes, it is. And you can see that if you go to my blog and the Bad UFOs, there's a search box up in the corner. I put a video out, a link to a YouTube video of Tom DeLonge and aliens, and the label I gave it was, "Dude, where's my saucer?" Because that's really what it sounds like. Oh, you want to hear about aliens? Oh, my friend's got a place. Oh, Robert, you hear about pyramids on Mars? And it's like, wow.
Let me ask you. Okay, I watched the entire series, and it seemed to me, and I'm trying not to be gullible here. I was trying to be objective watching it, and it really did seem like they took kind of a skeptic's approach. They never came out until the very end and said that it might be ET related, and even then, in hushed tones, they really tried to say that they proved that it was nothing from this current technology that we know about, other than it could have been a military exercise of some kind just to punk the people on that carrier. But from what everybody's saying, it wasn't. That it actually was.
Yeah, I don't think the military does that anyway. I don't think that they do things to punk the other. One branch of the military doesn't try to punk the other branch.
Exactly. Well, that's what I'm
not
saying.
Officially, anyway, maybe unofficially, but yeah. No. Well, it's interesting. Now, first point to make: those videos were not released by the Pentagon. No matter what Tom DeLonge has told us and how many times he has said it, no matter what Elizondo has told us and no matter how many times he has said it, the Pentagon says that there was no release These videos were not released to the public, and they claim to have this chain of custody documentation, but they don't. And then they released something to George Knapp, who put it on his website or something, and it was essentially it was Elizondo requesting that some videos be released for the public, but not for the public, I'm sorry, be released for internal analysis to different organizations. And we don't even know for sure if that was approved. So frankly, these were just leaked. If they were in there, somebody just plain leaked them. But nobody seems to care much about that anymore. So much shit is leaking these days, in Washington.
How do you feel about okay, so let's just look at the videos that were released, regardless of the province of them. What do you think of the what do you think of the videos?
I think let's see, we got the three. We got the one that is the so-called Tic Tac from 2004. Then from 2015, we have the other one, the gimbal UFO, and the so-called Go Fast UFO. Right. Well, the first two that I mentioned are probably distant jets. These are infrared images, and if you look at a distant infrared image of a jet plane, it looks very much like that. There's been a lot of analysis of this done, Mick West and some others on Debunking, and I have the links to all these on my blog if you want to find it. When the pilots of the Tic Tac were sent, the radar operator sees something that supposedly is up in the air and is out there in the middle of the ocean. So he says to these guys who are already airborne and doing some other maneuvers, go to that spot and look for this thing. And get there, they don't see anything, at least nothing in the air. So then they look down and they see something in the water. Now, was it a Tic Tac, or was it a whale? Was it a ship, or maybe even a balloon? There was like a blimp that they were seeing from the top. I mean, it's hard to say. And then he starts circling around it, and supposedly it was circling him. But then you've kind of got the Gorman dogfight all over again, where it's very referring to a famous case from way back in 48 or something like that, where a combat pilot, appeared to have fought a dogfight with a lighted balloon.
Okay, so now, but they also tried to bolster the entire story with their follow-through, going down to Baja, interviewing fishermen. There are other reports from other military people that say that it was, quote, raining UFOs. So these other testimonies, along with what they show, I mean, it's very compelling. And
yes, well, the guy who supposedly said that it was raining UFOs. Again, this was the one from the East Coast in 2015. The interesting thing is that, but it was pointed out by one of the reporters, I forget his name, that when in both cases these UFOs were sighted after the carrier group had installed a new radar, not just a radar, but whole new, essentially, radar and sensor system, putting it together. Then they started to get some fake, they started to get some unknown targets. But after a while, in both cases, they're not getting them anymore. So it makes me wonder, maybe the UFOs went back to Zeta Reticuli, or maybe they were in the West Coast in 2004, and then they moved to the East Coast 11 years later, and now they've moved somewhere else.
Well, this is the thing, though, with UFOs,
or else maybe there was this. Maybe this was just a problem with the radar. They hadn't really fully calibrated it, fully realized,
Robert,
hey, those kind of returns, it could be balloons or insects or something.
But wait, but here's, I think, is where a lot of us in ufology kind of stumble sometimes, is that we like the scientific method where we try to get repeatable results through constant testing. But you can't get a repeatable result from other intelligent beings who may move at random or do things at random. So I think sometimes this quest for the holy grail of scientific proof of make the ETs do it again, make them do it again, get them to flash it again. I think that's where that scientific method kind of falls apart sometimes. Don't you agree?
Well, yeah. Well, we know that things that cannot be repeated on demand unless you have control of a phenomenon. But I mean, if it's something like you said, suppose it's a wild animal, you can't make a wild animal do something on command.
Right,
yeah.
Right.
But but on the other hand, the point I'm making is that both of these incidents occurred, or groups of incidents occurred after the installation and sort of during the shakeout period of this new radar and sensors, and in both cases. And then it was there for a while, and then it went away. So, maybe it's just a coincidence that UFOs come and manifest themselves to ships who just had some new radars installed. You see the point I'm making?
Tom, stay on still, because I still want to keep you on unless no one else calls, and I'm going to keep you on with Robert till the end. But while this is still going on, as questions come into chat, I'm going to bring them on. And of course, after Robert answers them, Tom, if you want to say your 2 cents before resuming your questions, by all means. The first one is kind of a no-brainer, Robert, but I'm going to say it anyway. I have a feeling that somebody might have thought that you were advocating for flat Earth when no. Me and you know for a fact the Earth is not fucking flat. It's round. So, here's the question. Has this man ever went to the moon or know of anyone who did? And when they looked down, was the Earth round or did they see their flat Earth? P.S. The world is round.
Well, I've never been to the moon. I would love to go. I didn't get my chance. I haven't met any of the moonwalkers.
Oh, you didn't? I thought you knew Edgar Mitchell like I did.
No, I didn't know him. I know he was, he was into far out stuff about ESP and all this stuff. So, in fact, what was it? He founded a group.
Noetic Sciences.
Noetic Science?
Yeah.
Yes, I remember that. Yes. No, I didn't know him, but. So what was the question? The question was about whether the Earth was round. Well, we've seen the photos taken from the moon, but those are fake, obviously.
Right? Yeah. If it's a photograph, it's automatically fake. That's what I presume.
But wait, is the moon flat? Maybe the moon is not round like it appears to be. Maybe just because it always faces the same side toward us. Maybe that side is actually flat.
The flat side, right? And we're just looking at it as a
maybe
disc.
Both sides are flat. It's like a dinner plate, like the Earth is. It's flat like a dinner plate. And the one side is always facing us, and that's probably that explains something. I don't know what.
Same with the sun, right? And all the planets. Yeah. All right. Here's something that is okay. This is Lasha Senyak. Is it possible there are explanations of things that are not yet understood?
There's no possibility of that. We know everything, right?
For the flat earthers, yeah. Broadly on other topics.
Yeah. Well, of course, but what exactly is that supposed to mean? That someday we'll discover that, you know what, it isn't round, it's flat. I don't think so. Take an awful lot of discoveries and an awful lot of things being wrong. And in fact, I should point out, as many other people, I've traveled a bit here and there. I've been to Australia, and you know what? When you're down in Australia, you can see the Southern Cross, and you can see the Magellanic Clouds, which you will never see from here, from the U.S. So it's obvious you're on the other side of the globe. You're looking at the south side of the sky rather than the north side. If this is just the dome, we should be able to see all of the dome from any place along the flat Earth. Why is the Southern Cross only visible when you get near or below the equator? Why isn't it visible everywhere? It should be, but if it were on a dome.
All of these are valid points that just don't seem to get through to the flat earthers. That's the thing. Broadly, though, I think she was more broadly speaking about other things. And you did say it, but just to clarify that, in case she didn't miss that, yes, when the question was. And then, Tom, before you resume your question, just after Robert says something, I'd like to hear what you have to say. Again, I'll read it. Is it possible there are explanations of things, not flat Earth, just anything, that are not yet understood?
Of course. That's the nature of the world we live. The reality that we have in front of us is that there's just never going to be a never-ending bunch of stuff we don't know.
Right. What is dark matter? Well, we know it's there because we can see its gravitational influence, but what is it? Nobody knows.
There's people saying, well, maybe dark matter doesn't exist, maybe it's something else.
Or space is fake. We do have another call for you folks. This is area code 647. 647, you're on the line. Where are you calling from? What's your name?
Hello. It's Nicholas Cash calling from Toronto, Canada. How are you, gentlemen?
Cash.
How's it going?
I'm doing great.
Yeah, right.
All right. You
Right
got
on,
any
yeah.
comments or questions
I'm
for?
getting a bit fired. Yeah, I'm getting a bit fired up about this. As you know, I've had some pretty wild experiences, and I spend a lot of time in nature and do a lot of research. And I think the Almighty Creator sets things up and explains things to you and shows you things. So, question is, I'm going to switch gears here a bit about 9/11. What hit the Pentagon, and why was that location hit, and what happened with Building 7? A plane didn't hit it. I don't know if it's something that they would like to discuss.
We can now. Now that we're demonetized.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, I know a little bit about that. I can't claim to be an expert on it. As far as the Pentagon being hit, it looks like, basically the pilot, the terrorist, the hijacker, just tried to just put the plane right at the ground on the Pentagon, in the middle of one of the sides there, because he probably figured that's how he would do the greatest damage. And so the thing slid in there with tremendous energy and crumpled itself up and a lot of other stuff and killed a lot of people. Now I know they say that nothing was ever recovered from the plane, and I'm quite sure that's not true, because they went and recovered, I think, large parts of it and a bunch of dead bodies and everything else. As I say, I'm not an expert on it exactly.
There was an engine recovered. I know there was an engine recovered further in. It flew into one of the interior layers of the Pentagon.
Yeah. Now, as for Building 7, this is true. There was no airplane hit Building 7 of the World Trade Center, so why did it collapse? Well, the reason Building 7 collapsed was it was right next to those other two towers. They fell. It was a tremendous explosion occurring when those buildings fell. It was, as if you'd set off some huge, however many thousand pounds of dynamite bomb is the force created by those buildings collapsing. And in fact, I've seen the photo of Building 7 before it collapsed. After the towers collapsed, but before Building 7 collapsed, the whole side of the building was blown away. No wonder it collapsed.
No, let me say one thing to add to this Building 7 debate, is that on 9/11, that fateful day, the owner or the leaser, whoever it was, the guy who also tried to get insurance, he went during interviewed, and using demolition terms, he said that Building 7 had sustained massive damage from Tower 1 and Tower 2 collapsing, and we had to pull it, meaning that we had to demolish it in a controlled demolition. That's out there. That's not a conspiracy.
Why would you would
Yeah,
have
you
to
got
have
called out on it.
Yeah, that's a fact that he said this on camera to
But
CNN.
if you were going to do a controlled demolition, you wouldn't do it right then and right there. You'd wait until a situation had
and it also takes weeks to set up.
A photo of the thing. The whole side of the building is blown away. You could see that there's no way that thing could stand.
It fell at free fall speed. How do you explain that? There was no resistance, and also many agents went. Hold on. Many agents found dust samples containing thermite.
Nanothermite, yeah.
Many intelligence agencies around the world. So how could you say that?
I don't know.
It wasn't.
I'm not sure which so-called facts are really facts. I know I've read an analysis of the so-called falling at free fall speed, and it wasn't quite the case. It was close to that, but because it produces, slows things down a bit when you have to stop and crush things. But you get enough force behind it, it's going to fall pretty fast by the time it hits the bottom. So, but again, I'm not somebody who studied each and every point here, so I'm not going to be able to give you a refutation on each and every point. But other people have done that, and it's been published.
Robert, I got a question for you about that.
Nick, you could stay on too, by the way.
What do you think of the architects and engineers? I think they've been quite vocal about their findings. What do you think about what they had to say about it?
What are we talking about? Architects and engineers? Is this?
Yeah,
we're talking about the.
Yeah, they did have quite a bit of publicity about their findings that they felt was probably on more of the side of what the caller was saying, that there was a lot of inconsistencies and just coincidental that seemed a little bit larger than it should have been for that building and for what a lot of the other occurrences that happened that day. That was just a little bit, things just didn't seem to add up as being just, what seemed to happen on the surface.
Well, I don't even know what group we're talking about. I mean, is this really a professional organization, or is it, somebody created a group and called it Architects and Engineers?
Yeah, there's over 5,000
before 9/11,
engineers.
Architects, what?
There's over 5,000 architects and engineers that assess the data that NIST
did this group
and
exist
rejected it.
before? Did this group exist before 9/11?
No, after, because they rejected the common sense that it was a controlled demolition.
Well, yeah.
That it wasn't
So
a
it
controlled
was,
demolition.
yeah. So it was a group that was put together of people who didn't want to accept the other view or the conventional views.
Correct, Robert. And the thing is these are architects and engineers that looked at the data and said, okay, something's not adding up here, and began to look at the data and say, okay, we reached a different conclusion that seems more like a conspiracy theory, but seems to make mathematical and logical sense, engineering sense from their point of view. That's what they were saying. I don't know.
So they think all these buildings were brought down by controlled demolition. What happened to the airplanes? Did the airplanes caused the buildings to fall, or did they say let's put this demolition?
They're remote control. The towers.
Let's put the
remote controls
in here.
There's a question to add if you guys want to take this now. Robert, meaning anyone else wants to say it. Okay, this is from Bill O'Connell 13. Question: what is the statistical probability of 4 airplanes' flight recorders all going missing?
And this refers to what?
I'm assuming that it was asked because
do they airplanes on
9/11?
Well, is that in fact the case?
The only thing I know for a fact is Muhammad Atta's passport was found unsinged, but I don't know about the recorders myself.
Isn't that amazing? Isn't that an amazing find?
Yeah, the unsinged passport, yeah.
That's conspiracy itself. That's just propaganda, nonsense, boogeyman stuff. What got me though is that it was public knowledge that the projectile that hit the Pentagon, all the video evidence was confiscated. 53 videos was confiscated that day by the FBI because it wasn't a plane that hit it.
Again, I hear these claims,
There's no evidence
and
the
I
plane
don't
hit
know
it.
which ones. I don't know which claims to believe or what the source is for those claims. We hear all the time that, well, I got a video of the UFO, but the Men in Black came, or the Air Force came and they took away my photos, they took away my videos. But again, you can't verify that. What videos are we talking about that the FBI took away? I mean, where were they? The only
one they released.
Oh, they did take Robert. What they did is they confiscated the gas station's video camera that was looking at the Pentagon. That's what they took. Yeah.
They only released couple frames.
Yeah.
They released a couple of frames, and it didn't show a plane hitting it, and hit the Navy accounting office. But that's another story.
Well, I don't stay up on all the latest details of all these conspiracies. I mostly look into UFO claims, and not that it's possible to know everything about that either. There's so many such claims, so many cases.
Why is so much talk of UFOs, extraterrestrials, and all over the world? There's over 7 billion people here on Earth. There's been quite a few more throughout history. How could we say that reject, say 1% of the population experiences if we haven't lived, the lives of 7 billion people and their, 89 years of life? I think it's very closed-minded to reject it instead of trying to understand and listening to things and to maybe experience yourself contacting them or, just remaining open-minded about it. It's more enjoyable. It's just more interesting to be able to understand where we are in the universe, our level of evolution, our ascension, where we are with our consciousness, how we connect, metaphysics, just more interesting to try to understand it than try to reject it.
Well, again, you say to try to understand it, but that's kind of, you're presupposing that, well, it's, it's really true that, these claims that are being made, that they're being contacted by beings or ultra-terrestrials or extraterrestrials or whatever they might happen to be, or from the Hollow Earth. I should point out that the Hollow Earth people were there at the MUFON Symposium 2 weeks ago. But, so this is...
So, Robert, how would you determine between who's delusional and who isn't? That's the thing. Is okay. So maybe there are people making stuff up, but what about the people? There are people probably actually experiencing these events. How do you determine that?
Well, I say purportedly experiencing these events. Well, again, now some, there have been a few psychiatrists and psychologists who have, have believed in this sort of thing, like John Mack. But they are definitely in the minority, and if you look at a number of these others who have studied the thing and written books, written articles, they view it as a as sort of a psychological aberration rather than a real event. So if you say, well, why shouldn't we, find out about this? Well, I agree that studying is good, but I wouldn't presuppose that there's any basis in fact.
But Robert, what if it were true? Ancient astronauts.
Well, that'd be pretty amazing. It'd be very amazing. But again, if somebody come up with some real evidence, and then that would be different. Otherwise, it's just stories that they tell, or feelings that they have, or there's a little scrape in their elbow to see, I got this scrape when the aliens picked me up. Well, maybe, or maybe you got it and you scraped your elbow on the wall outside. I mean, it's.
But how do you explain their species names? How do you explain their species, their names? And it's like, how do you explain the common consensus and the names of each species? Like the reticuli, the Nordic white.
Oh, yeah. Well, again,
that's out of nowhere. Like.
Yeah, well, I bet you know the names of all of Snow White's dwarfs, and how do you explain that so many people know that? I don't know right now. I can probably think of a lot of them. Or, these characters. Yeah, I'm thinking when there's a common tradition, a common oral tradition, or a common literary tradition, then you're going to get, people telling similar stories. But that doesn't mean necessarily that it has a foundation in reality. It just means it's sort of a common folklore.
Wow.
I know there's some silence here. I'm waiting for you guys. I'm just paying attention to the questions in the chat. This is kind of what I was hoping to do.
I'll stick my neck out here, and I'm an experiencer and contactee. I'm a university graduate, successful business owner, investor, philanthropist. I'm no dummy, and I'm not lying here, but I've seen 20 UFOs and met 3 space people that actually froze my friends on a beach in 2012 up here in Canada. And I'll make a long story short, the space person looked down at me, he was 10 feet tall with huge eyeballs, and I was frightened big time. And I looked up at him, and I wanted to understand why my friends were frozen, why I felt this power come over me, why the waves stopped moving. And I looked up at him and said, "Who are you? What are you doing here?" And he looked down at me. He said, "We can come and go whenever we want. Nothing can stop us." And if you felt that power, and him looking down at you when you're looking at a being's eyes that's 10 feet tall with huge eyeballs, mass irises, that's a lot more sophisticated than our irises, after that you would understand that we're not alone.
Well, if that happened to me, then I probably would agree with that. But I'm sure that's your interpretation of what happened. But maybe it could have been a dream or something, or some. I don't know, or some kind of a psychological explanation, but I wasn't there. I didn't see it, so I really can't say. I don't think that represents actual reality because it didn't happen. I mean, that same thing, you should have. If that saucer were there, it should have been seen by a lot of other people, and if other, but then you say, well, time froze or something like that. Well, again, we don't know of that happening. I mean, that's another kind of a mark against your story, because you're telling us that something happened that we're pretty sure doesn't happen. So, that just makes it harder. It doesn't mean that you're not being sincere. That just means that I just don't think that whatever interpretation you're giving it is based on how things actually were.
But how do you know it wasn't
Yeah,
true, though, Robert? How do you know it's not
I
true?
have 5 witnesses. I have 5 witnesses
And they
that
all
are very
said the same thing.
people,
Well,
highly
if ever,
intelligent.
did anybody get any pictures? Anybody have
Reality.
a cell phone? Or,
But
what?
even the lack
No, we
of
didn't. Unfortunately, no.
evidence doesn't mean
No.
it didn't happen.
No.
That's the thing. Is that just the lack of evidence doesn't mean it didn't happen. That's the
Right,
problem.
it doesn't.
They've been very good at shielding themselves from leaving a trail or leaving evidence by supposedly blanking people's
Well,
memories, missing time.
They drain batteries too and all that. They have power over electricity too, right? And over our consciousness, over our bodies. But they're far more advanced than we are. And that's something, it's a bit frightening, and that there's greater powers than us here that are visiting. And what is their agenda? Where are they from? You know, what is the future? What is humanity? What is our past? What's our real past with humanity? You know, it creates so many answers. I think the best thing to do is try to be genuine, sincere, and to try to understand what's really going on here instead of inventing ideas to reject these possibilities. It's something that I never want to be a skeptic. I'm a skeptic for sure. I'm a debunker. Like, I debunked the bullshit 9/11 government conspiracy, what happened. So I'm on that page too. However, I know what I've experienced. I've had crafts come down. My wife and I and several other people at a campground, and it was orange and red, and it was like a nanotechnology. It was so immaculate, so beautiful. Came right down to us, and then did a right turn and shot off faster than I've ever seen an object move. Right there and then, we knew that this is reality, and I sincerely asked myself in prayer and meditation to see, is this real? I'm only here for hopefully 8 years.
Hello?
Hang tight, caller. I was just going to let them finish real quick. We got another caller if you guys are willing to take that real quick right now, but I wanted to give Robert a chance to respond to what Nick said.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, again, it's I would just have to repeat what I said before. That I mean, if a story tells us about things that we don't think happen,
Hello.
Yeah, turn down your volume in the background, please. We're catching the echo. Yeah, we're catching your echo, ma'am.
Oh, it's the echo that I'm hearing. Yeah. Very hard to concentrate.
Yeah,
on
please
there.
turn down the volume, or I'm gonna have to hang up that call.
Well, if I get a chance, it's Tammy George calling. I'd like to ask something.
Well, Tammy, if you could turn down the volume, I'll keep you on so you could ask that question. But turn down the volume, because you can't. Yeah, it's interfering with the
I was
guest.
just going to say that
Okay.
to the previous caller. Next time if you see something like that, and your friends see something like that, be sure to get lots of pictures. Be sure to get videos, because if like 4 or 5 people together, each individually got videos of the same thing, and it showed the same object, and it was consistent, it wasn't just some, thing that, that was thrown together and somebody hoaxed it. If you could clearly see that this is several different, images of the same thing and doing the same movements and everything, that'd be very hard to say that that's not real. So I think that should be the focus on trying to, get multiple independent witnesses and videos and photos, and that will go a long way toward trying to establish and explain this.
Here, before we take the next question, just everybody who calls, remember, make sure you turn off anything in the background that's going to interfere with our call, especially what you're hearing this from. And please don't say a word until I call your name or area code. So, Tammy, welcome to the show.
Dave. Hi.
Hi.
All right. I would like to know what you're a debunker? Is that what you call yourself?
In fact, I guess you could say that. I'd like to think I'm a skeptic.
Okay.
Some people say I'm a debunker. I have debunker.com as one of my websites.
Okay. So can I ask you this? Who pays your salary and how much do you make?
Oh, nobody pays my salary for debunking. I'm a retired software engineer. I used to work in the Silicon Valley. I'm down in San Diego now, But nobody pays me for debunking or being skeptical or anything like that. I sell a few books. I have a book called Bad UFOs, which is, based on same kind of material that's on the website. But other than that, I mean, there's no money in it.
Oh, okay. Well, so do you, so like the UFO sightings that we had, because I'm from the Cincinnati, Ohio area, and the UFOs that was taken out here just a week ago.
Oh yeah, I saw that. I'm pretty sure those turned out to be the parachutists that have the lights. They put flares on their ankles.
Yeah, what we do is when we're skydiving, when we want lights, we put them on our ankle. They could be strobes, they could be flares, and that's a common thing when we jump at night.
Yeah, and so this is what was it? Scott Brando, I think, Italian investigator, looked at. In fact, he contacted them. I forget the name of the group, and they replied, and they said, "Yes, that was us. We were jumping at night with lights, and we're glad you enjoyed our show." Lots of people said, they saw the lights, and they said there's UFOs.
Okay, because I know there was two different sets. One was in Fairfield, and there's another set that was taken from people driving on the highway.
I don't know for sure, but I would imagine they both would show the same thing.
Well, I mean, the ones that I've seen from here, I know the one they thought the first one, they wasn't for sure if it was the skydivers doing that. And then the other set that we have seen, you can absolutely tell those are not skydivers.
Well,
there's no way.
Well, I don't know how you could tell, but I guess you could. How can you tell? Can you see something else? I mean, you would just see lights in the distance of the skydivers.
No, I'd have to pull up the videos to see them again, but not all of them were like the ones they just posted, last week.
Yeah. Well, the skydivers have acknowledged, yes, that was us, and so I think that's pretty well settles that matter.
Well, that's the same thing they say when Area 51, they come up with some other, we're doing a military run, or they were doing this and doing that.
Let's not
and they
beat
think
dead
all
horses,
of us
guys. Let's not beat dead horses.
I know, I get it. I'm just saying.
Ask a question, get the answer. If you want another question, by all means. Because I want to make sure there's enough room for everybody. That's the biggest thing here.
I was just curious of how you could keep doing. It was if it was how you financially was able to do it. That's what I was curious about.
Remember, I mentioned earlier, he's very intelligent.
As a hobby.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Okay. Before I get back to Nick and Tom that are still on hold, there's a question here in the chat which comes from. Let me see. Where's the most recent one? This is from Melanie Gallegos. How do you explain the multiple videos or pictures of crafts taken by numerous people?
Well, I'm not quite sure what we are referring to here. If we're talking about some specific video, or if we're just kind of talking about the quantity of videos, that there's so many of them. Isaac Coe has done an analysis of, he's done like a big collection of videos and so on, and photos, and in which he goes into and explains many of them. He's not really a skeptic in the same sense that I am, but he's much more of should we say, a realist than some people are. And I should point out really that probably the best thing to do is to say, I'm not going to be really a UFO believer, I'm not going to be a UFO skeptic, I'm going to be a UFO realist and go wherever real facts and real data take me, and not fantasy or claims that can't be substantiated. So I'm not really sure what is meant here, but I think it's like you can't substitute quantity for quality. If each one of these is not very good and is a zero, then the sum of any number of zeros is zero.
Okay, we have another caller, 919. Welcome to the show. What's your name and where are you calling from?
Hi, I'm Claudio Marty. Right now I'm in Florida, and somebody just said, Claudia, you got to call. And you got to, two reasons why. She says you guys brought up 9/11.
Yes.
And I founded IamTheFaceOfTruth.com. We're a marketing campaign to get the 9/11 truth out there to the general public. And
did you hear anything that was said prior?
No, I didn't.
Okay. Can I suggest you place yourself on hold until you're ready?
She'll get mad at me if I don't call in. Sorry.
Yeah. No, I'm saying, can you put yourself on mute and stay muted until you've heard enough to be able to say something, or you want to call back when you're ready?
Well, the other thing is about UFOs. It was UFOs that led me to 9/11. I started doing researching UFOs. I was in North Carolina at the time, and I saw a UFO as big as a 747. And I also had my neighbors watched it, and it was no skydivers unless you're 150 feet wide, and the thing didn't budge. It was it was really windy that day. The clouds were passing by. It was right after a rainstorm, and this sucker didn't move. We thought it was a star, except a cloud passed over it and lit up the entire cloud. And then it was a 747 coming from Raleigh Airport. He went off course to go underneath it. It was the awesomest thing, because usually they go from east to west. They're going like towards California, and they take this one route. And we're used to it. You're there for years, so you know their routes. You watch these planes go by. And this guy went off course to go underneath the thing. I mean, I would have done the same thing. But the thing was huge.
Well, I find it a little hard to believe. Of course, he could have had a different destination. Maybe most of the flights go to California, but a few of them go to Maine or something, and they go the other way.
Well, no, yeah. Well, anyway, that's what that was. I witnessed. That was the first one. The second one was only about 150 feet away from us. And again, my neighbor and she was in the other condominium complex. She saw it from her balcony, and it was just sitting above the tree line, motionless for she said about 15 minutes, and she was just stunned. All she was doing was looking at this thing. She didn't think about getting a camera, video, or anything. And she was trying to figure out what the thing was. Only 20 feet above the tree line. And then I saw it as it was taken off.
No photos, no videos.
Whoever's got the bad background video or bad background audio, please keep it to a minimum so people can hear properly, and try not to speak over one another. So when someone asks Robert a question, please wait till he finishes his response before going on.
I have a little delay, so I don't mean to be rude or anything. So I got a little delay going on over here, but I'm not trying to talk and talk to anyone.
Okay.
And that's it. But anyway, I'll continue listening to the show, regarding the 9/11 part. But just look up Richard Dolan. Richard Dolan is.
Yeah, we all know him very well. He's been on the show more.
All right, good. Yeah. That's all you need. That's all you got to do. Just go to the facts guy. Everything else, But I'll continue to listen to regarding the 9/11.
Okay, just call back when you have a question. That way the lines are taken. Okay.
Will do. Bye-bye.
Thanks. All right. Now we still have Nicholas and Tom on, right?
Yeah. Can I ask a question about chemtrails?
I am here.
Okay, go for it, Nick. Then Tom.
So a lot of countries have oil in different forms. Some ready for market, some have to be processed, and so forth. It is like the Iranian president, Ahmadinejad, whatever how do you pronounce his name, said about I guess 8 years ago that the U.S. is stealing water and making everything is dry. So it is said that these planes are spraying particulate matter that and also biological contaminants possibly in the air. And then the water will it creates these lines in the sky, and then the water will crystallize on the particulate matter, and then it rains. Apparently, they do that, or they can hit it with like a direct energy weapon from different sites.
I'm confused. Whose plane? Are these Iranian planes or are these American planes?
Well, I think these are American planes that get this blue gold because not the whole world. A lot of the countries have the oil, but they don't have the water, the fresh water resources. So if you're thinking 50, 80 years ahead in terms of what your needs are, your national security and so forth, wouldn't it be wise to try to take all the water and put it in the ground for yourself and steal it from like Africa, for instance, or other countries that do not have this technology or ability?
How could we steal water from Africa? You think that if we spray something in the air in either Africa or in Iran or someplace
like North
this
America,
is going to give us the money? I mean, this is going to give us their water?
No, North America. If you sprayed in North America and you watch the wind patterns, the barometric pressure and everything, and test lines, and then you say, oh, okay, well, there isn't, there's wind here, it hasn't been here for a while. Like I know, for instance, like Russia has said that they've used technology whenever they have military parades, they have cloud cover. Here in North America, same idea. I know that there's huge money in insurance that they can actually make it not rain or make it send up ionized silver to dissipate the hailstorms, for instance. So weather can be a weapon. There's so many patents out there. Have you researched U.S. patents at all on weather warfare?
I'm afraid not. No. So wait. So I'm trying to understand what you're saying. So you're saying that this is done as the purpose of the chemtrails is to either to make it rain or to prevent it from raining, or
to make it rain to basically steal the rain, basically. To make it more lush.
That's a new one I haven't heard.
The only thing I've heard is, I'll tell you this, when there was the 2008 Olympics going on in Beijing, because of their horrible climate, and aside from having the cars, depending on what your license plate ended, you could drive one day of the week as opposed to others, they did have these mortars with if they saw rain clouds coming in, so the rain wouldn't fall over where the athletes were, they were sending up mortars that would explode. And this is not a conspiracy, this is on every mainstream network that was covering the Olympics, and it would force the clouds to dump the rain before they went 15-20 miles inland. So they surrounded Beijing with these essentially mortars that would, I don't know how you could induce a rain cloud to fall, but yeah, I didn't even know this existed until I saw it on NBC, ABC, CNN.
I don't know, maybe a shock wave might do that. I can't imagine it would be very effective, but I suppose it's possible.
Well, I know they didn't have to use it because there was no rain at all anywhere near Beijing.
Oh, really? Yeah, I would wonder how. I mean, I can understand how a shock wave. You got a cloud with water in it, with moisture in it, and a shock wave might cause precipitation right then. But again, how much are you going to get, and how, and what effect are you going to have in it? This idea of stealing the water, I haven't even heard that before. I think it's a strange one. There's plenty of water in the world. If you really want water, then you build these big desalinization plants, like on the side of the ocean, and you put, use nuclear power, and you can just get huge amounts of fresh water that way.
Khashoggi did that for Saudi Arabia.
Yeah, exactly. So there seems to me if you wanted water, that's the way to do it, not this spraying something in the sky.
You can Google it. Emirates does the spraying every week. Every week they're doing basically chemtrail technology.
Every week.
To make it rain.
In Dubai, they're doing that?
There's a government organization that does it, publicly. They said it,
Well, they see that. I mean, it's old technology that they've been, if the clouds have moisture in them, and you put, I forget what, you seed them with something, and then you can get, they will drop their moisture right there. But to link that to chemtrails I think is a stretch. I mean, we see these lines, sometimes very prominent lines in the sky made by jets, and people say, well, those are chemtrails. They're spraying something up there. No, a cloud is forming. The aircraft essentially, the wake of the aircraft causes. It doesn't occur in all conditions. It has to be with temperature.
Hold on, one at a time. Let Robert finish, Tom, and then I'll go to you, and then I'll take Pam after that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just saying that when the humidity and the temperature is just right, this causes a cloud, a cirrus cloud, to condense along the trail where the aircraft is going, and then the thing continues to grow for a while, depending on how much moisture and everything is in the air. So you see these long lines, and they look like they're spraying smoke or something. It's really just water vapor. It's just a cloud. That's all it is, just a cloud.
I have video of two planes side by side. One is doing a long chemtrail, the other one is not. So the whole thing about contrails and chemtrails, I've seen it live. When I lived in Nashville, I saw just this giant crisscross tic-tac-toe of clouds that I never saw 40, 50 years ago. We didn't see growing up. So this whole thing
there weren't
about...
as many planes up there then, up at that altitude at that time.
Either this is intentional or something's being added to the fuel to cause this, because this is not a contrail where it's caused by ice vapor, the classic contrail. This is something different. And are you familiar with the work of Dane Wigington and geoengineeringwatch.org? Have you seen what he's talked about? This guy, he became bothered by the solar dimming that's being caused by these trails. And so he started doing research, and they started finding that there is an increase in aluminum, barium, and strontium in the atmosphere and in the soil, and that it was killing the microbiome of bacteria. This is why there's like a rise in black mold and some of these other molds that are like getting a rise, because this biodome has been kind of damaged by these chemtrails that they were trying to do for solar.
And where is this? Where is this supposedly damaging the ground?
Well,
we're talking about everywhere, or
everywhere? Yeah,
what?
Supposedly everywhere.
Everywhere. Well, I don't know.
Probably the G7 countries.
That's what they're saying. But
there's more pollinators.
They did soil samples. They did a lot of soil samples and testing. There was a lot of labs. I think the best thing to do is to hear their story from their own website, which would be, I think it's geoengineeringwatch.org. But what they have to say is very compelling. So you might want to take a look at that.
Well, I'd have to see it.
And I think they stopped doing chemtrails, and there's more pollinators now. I know that, for instance, Monsanto and the chemical companies, for instance, from World War II, that Agent Orange, and they basically have taken over the food supply in the United States, using their lawyers and trespassing and all these nonsense clauses and attacks on the farmers. But ultimately, I've been seeing a lot more bugs, a lot more insects and pollinators and monarchs. For instance, the biological indicators are saying, okay, we're healthier now. We're rejuvenating. So I've seen in a direct correlation with less chemtrails in North America. So it's like less is summer. So yeah, I think it all plays. Everything's one, right? The whole ecosystem is one. So yeah, good point.
Go ahead, Robert.
Yeah, well, again, I'm just still trying to figure out why the government bothers to do all this chemtrail spraying. What does it benefit them? What does it, I guess maybe it steals water from someplace, or some people say, well, it's supposed to stop global warming. Some people say it's they're trying to poison us, or maybe on the other hand, give us immunity to some strange disease somewhere that they're working on, or we're all being guinea pigs tested. They're testing out, sprays and vaccines on us or something. There's all kinds of things I've heard, but I've never figured out any credible reason why any government or major organization like that would even want to be up there spraying all this stuff around, especially when you consider how expensive that would be. And sooner or later they'd get caught, and they would be covered, I suppose, in the real media. Well, not that we trust them anymore, but what?
This is the hidden hand. This is the so-called cabal that people believe. This is another conspiracy that people believe that there is this hidden hand that is trying to manipulate global populations, and that this is part of it, that these chemtrails are being used to either plant nanites into our skin. I think there's a disease, Morgellons disease, that it's there to induce mind-numbing chemicals that keep people stupid and unaware about what's going on. So there's a lot of different theories about what's coming down from the sky because of these trails that people can obviously see in the sky, and you can photograph them. It's not something that you can say isn't happening. The definition or the truth and the reality is the thing that people really want to know.
Well, yeah, I can see them too. They're up there, but like I said, those are actually, they're not, what they are cirrus clouds that condense around a contrail. If cloud-producing meteorological conditions exist. Also, you will find, next time you see a so-called chemtrail in the sky, look around very carefully, and you'll see other faint, fluffy cirrus clouds, usually very thin ones, in the sky. It's extremely rare to see a so-called chemtrail and nothing else in the sky, no clouds of any kind. Almost invariably, you will see a thin, hazy layer of cirrus clouds, and it just means that when the airplane passed through that region where those clouds are forming, the contrail of the airplane triggered formation of a cirrus cloud in its wake.
Hold on, Tom. Robert, let me say this. Do you agree with me that the global warming, I call it a hoax, is indeed a hoax? Because I truly think that this...
I wouldn't call it a hoax, but I would say it's being
blown up, right?
They're taking, you know, whatever degrees of facts they have, they're taking the absolute worst case
and multiplying that 100-fold.
Least likely worst case, and saying this is inevitably going to happen unless you do exactly as we say.
Yes.
Yeah. For some reason,
I know
people
humanity,
need to be skeptical of that. But yeah,
humanity could not have caused more than, at most, Robert, this is the worst case scenario, 0.5% of the damage to the ozone layer. I think the rest, we're just in a natural cycle, like the Earth has been doing for 4.5 billion years.
Well, now the ozone is a different thing, and actually, you know, even since it's been like almost 30 years now since these CFCs and things were banned, the ozone layer still really hasn't changed much. It hasn't come back.
Yes.
In fact, there was a record low was set after the year 2000. So, you know, I think, you know, again, as a case of great exaggeration of everybody crash program, let's do this, let's reorganize life, let's everybody do as the government says. Well, you know, it's exaggerated.
I wanted to say this earlier, I didn't get a chance to get this in. One funny observation that I have noticed, and that is, if I both noticed this about chemtrails, about 3 days later you're going to get rain. So you might do that casual observation. Yeah, there is something about it.
If the cirrus clouds that are coming in are indicative of a coming weather system that's approaching, then maybe that's it. Maybe the chemtrails, what are so-called, will give you almost an early warning of the rain when the conditions are right for them to form.
Before I go to Nick for the next question, let me read this in the chat. And by the way, since we technically should have ended a minute ago, but we did start a few minutes late, I just wanted to ask Robert if you're okay in staying however long it would take to finish these questions in this chat.
Well, I got to do something, so let's
we'll wrap it up. We'll wrap it up. Yeah, okay. Melanie Gallegos, how would you explain the government confirming the Tic Tac UFO?
Oh, well, they didn't confirm it.
They confirmed that it was something unidentified. That's what they confirmed.
No, they didn't really confirm anything. Government didn't confirm anything. Government didn't talk about it. Lou Elizondo did. Tom DeLonge did. To the Stars did.
Well, no. Commander Fravor.
The government did not release those videos. Again, this has been well established by freedom of information requests and things like that. It is not.
Well, what I do know that we can't contest is Commander Fravor, who was one of the pilots that chased the Tic Tac members.
Right. He said he saw it. Yes, that we can agree.
Crew members of the USS Nimitz.
No, the government didn't say anything about this.
Yeah, other than when I saw the CNN, breaking news, DOD releases 3, unexplained videos. But aside from Commander Fravor...
Again, remember we said DOD did not release it. That was wrong.
That was
fake
Lou
news, so to speak.
Elizondo and Tom DeLonge.
Well, Elizondo claims that the government released them, but...
Yeah, but they were responsible.
By way of Freedom of Information request and by talking to Pentagon spokesmen, have ascertained that they were not released.
Yeah, it was Tom DeLonge who released him, or whatever. He had his hand in that because...
Or leaked them, or somebody leaked them. That's all. That's what it means.
Because Tom DeLonge's reason...
When people say, well, the government did this, the government admitted that. No, they didn't. They didn't say anything.
I know the reason that Tom DeLonge won the award primarily was because he had a hand in getting those 3 videos to the media. That's all I know as far as
exactly.
confirmed.
Yeah, and in fact, that hadn't happened yet. My recollection is that those 3 videos had not yet turned up at the time that
Tom
he
won?
Was given his. I think it came later because was that 2016 or 2017? I think it was 2017.
He won 20.
Yeah.
Either 17 or 18, but the videos were released December 16 or 17. But you're right. I think he won
2017. Yeah, it was like almost a year before that they gave him, as I guess they knew he was working on this stuff. But anyway,
there's been many defense ministries releasing video evidence. There's been many defense ministries releasing evidence. You have to be international, global. Mexico released from Belgium has Dr. Greer met with top officials in France about UFOs that are visiting there. So you just have to be more, get out there more and do more research and explore every possibility there is. Before you make your conclusion and try to reject these possibilities. That's the whole thing here.
Yeah, I wouldn't put much credence in Dr. Greer, but.
But as much as he comes on here, and as much as we're friends as we could be, as well as I do, I don't want to screw up all the people that are on. We have, of course, my guests, Robert, Tom, and Nick. Okay, we both know that even within the UFO community, that most people don't take everything Greer has to say and say, oh yeah, this is right. For instance, Linda Moulton Howe, Preston Dennett, pretty much everybody you saw at the MUFON Symposium will not say what Greer is saying is right. And so even within that community, there's battles, if you want to call it that.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Now, because we have gone over the time, and I know I definitely missed questions in the chat long ago because we had calls, and I know I told these people to stay on. So now let's try to wrap up, because after we finish with these 2 calls, I do want to give Robert a time to not just plug in his books, his where to find him, but of course to say any final statements he wants to say, and then of course for me and him to chat momentarily off air. So who is next, Tom or Nick? Let's make this the final question and statement for both of you.
I'm good.
Go ahead, I'm getting out of here.
Yeah.
Anybody? Okay. Do any of you want to say one final thing? There's only you, Tom.
I just want to say thank you, Robert, for coming by. It's good to talk with people. That there should be more of you out there asking some hard questions, and it's good to hear. So.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Maybe we'll see you at some UFO conferences or something like that.
All right, then. We'll look forward to it. Thanks again.
All right, great.
Okay.
Right. Thank you, Tom. Well, Robert, I've been promising people for a long time I'm going to bring my good friend Robert Sheaffer on, and I also told them I will bring on Michael Shermer, who you probably know much closer than I do.
Oh, absolutely. I've known Michael for many years. I first met him back 30 years ago or something, just when he was first getting started.
Be interested in being on with him, or do you think it's better to have him on his own and then bring you back on your own sometime?
He and I wouldn't really debate anything.
No, but you both can debate maybe Richard Dolan or something like that.
Oh yeah, I'd be happy to talk to Dolan or anybody like that. I think that would be interesting. I think Dolan, he strikes me as somebody who's just, rather confused some of the time, and some of what he says makes perfect sense, and other times he's down there in Mexico City with the Roswell slides and Jaime Maussan, and it's like, what was he thinking?
Well, you're right, but the good thing is unlike when I had the Bill Burns and you debate, he will keep it together and be professional like Stan Friedman, meaning he's going to allow you to speak. And when people are in a debate, when they run out of the ability to debate the facts or the minutia or their argument, when they start interrupting and attacking the person as an individual, it clearly comes off as pure desperation. So that was not a very good debate, but I know regardless of the outcome of Richard
supposed to be a debate.
No, it wasn't. He just called in. He just called in.
Stomping around and complaining.
And remember when he got off and I had to hang up and he called from a different number and a third number?
Yeah, I remember that.
So that was that. And if everybody wants to hear it, just go through my YouTube. I don't know how many of you that have been listening to me for the last year or less, but there is hundreds of great shows on my channel. And then another several hundred that are not on my channel, which are being uploaded to my archives daily on my website. So I highly recommend you listening to the past shows I've done with just Robert, as well as the official debate with Stan Friedman and Robert Sheaffer. And then when Robert was supposed to be on alone, and we had Bill Burns that actually, I think he even kicked me off my own show that night.
Yeah.
So
I guess if I have just a minute or so to close here, my blog is badufos.com. I cover a lot of material there. I try to stay up to date on things, and I have a lot covering this, To the Stars and Tom DeLonge and Elizondo and all that. There's a little search box up in the corner, so if there's anything you're interested in, getting the skeptical version of, for example, you want to know about the Phoenix Lights or you want to know about Betty Hill or something, you just put that in the search box, and something will come up, and you'll see what I have there. And I also have a book called badufos.com, which is on Amazon, or you can get it click from the website from the blog. I also have debunker.com, which is mostly his older material, but I have quite a bit on there, and so that's about sums it up.
And let me say this for everybody out there: badufos.com, whether or not you don't believe anything from the skeptics, if at least you should look at it to see where they're reasoning as far as thought process. I've been friends with Robert, like I said, it'll be 7 years coming in February. His website has a lot. If you want to know, for instance, how when he went to the MUFON Symposium, he will go lecture by lecture and everything, and from the history of knowledge he has, really, the only thing I could say is I strongly recommend you all looking at it. Whether it's going to make you upset or not, just do it so you can be fair and balanced. It's always, in law, right? If I'm prosecuting somebody or if I'm defending somebody, you don't think I want to know what the prosecutor's files have? That's what discovery is for. Think of this as discovery. Look to the other side, folks. It's not going to hurt you. So,
see what they've got.
yeah, thank you. See what they've got, So with that being said, Robert, please hang on for a moment so I can thank you again off air. I'll make this real quick. For everybody out there, thank you so much for engaging. If any of the questions that I saw in chat I missed and was not able to go back and ask, I truly apologize. Robert, we'll do this again for sure, so you guys will have another chance. And when we have calls, keep in mind calls take priority over chat questions. As much as I try to follow everything at once, because when I open up the lines, it's a whole new area. So keep that in mind. Thursday, we're going to be talking from the directors and producers of an up-and-coming movie which is scheduled to be released in a handful of weeks. If you've ever seen the documentary, or whatever you want to call it, Extraordinary, the Stan Romanek movie, this is part 2 without Stan Romanek. It's called Extraordinary, the Seeding. I've already seen the screening of it, and unfortunately most of you, unless you've seen the screening, will not be able to see it until it's released, which I think might be September 3rd. And you could already tell what this is going to be about. Just search Extraordinary, the Seeding, John Sumple, and I believe 1 or 2 of the other members in the production who are responsible for getting this movie out there will be here this Thursday. Remember, nothing tomorrow, folks, and unless I decide something random, but usually I don't do anything on Wednesdays lately. And remember, one final thing, folks. I said this earlier, and I'm going to say it again. Please do support this endeavor if that's what you all want. If you like this show, if you like the guests that I bring, and remember, it takes an enormous effort to go get you the maker of kings, the maker of presidents, or another head of state, or anything like that. There's a lot of money involved in this production, and that's why I need the listeners to really step it up. Share, like, do whatever you can so I can make this a viable career, or I'll have to put it back to strictly the hobby angle, and that would mean probably going off air for at least 1 or 2 years, and if I reappear, it might be maybe 1 show every month at that, because if I'm going to be spending 80 to 100 hours a week practicing law, I don't know how much time there will be left for this. I can take the bar exam in February, but because it has been so many years where I could have taken it since the time I graduated law school, it's going to take a considerable amount of time in studying. I could also take the bar next July. However, since each month I'm not even breaking even for this show, let alone what else needs to be paid for, and I cannot borrow any more money from credit cards or banks. I need you, dear friends and family out there listening, to do your best. Also, the Joe Rogan Experience. We've talked about this before, and we're going to keep mentioning this until something happens. I mentioned that Joe Rogan studio, where he does the Joe Rogan Experience, is 5 freaking miles away from me in Woodland Hills. I'm in Northridge. That I could walk there, folks. Everybody, I recommend go on to JRE. I don't have the website in front of me. Just search JRE Contact. Suggest that he book me and make it happen. If that's where you guys want to see me. If you don't, well, you don't. And hey, let me just give a super shout out, because we got another super chat. Nicholas Cashmore, super thank you to you, and I really appreciate it. Again, all of you out there who are supporting this, I truly, truly appreciate. With that being said, folks, this is Dr. J with skeptic and good friend Robert Sheaffer, and we are officially going off air.